what's going on, guys? It is Fox98 here, and welcome back to a brand new video. And today, we're going to be bringing back the F1 debate for 2025, as it was something that I had been doing for the past couple of years. I stopped it, not realizing that people actually found it very informative at points. So we're going to bring it back for 2025, and hopefully try and improve it. And let me know if you keep enjoying these F1 debate videos, and I will try and do them more regularly, not only just after the races, but when there's other bits of news and information that comes out. But for today's F1 debate video, I wanted to go ahead and give my personal rankings to the F1 2025 driver lineups, going from the worst driver lineup all the way to the best driver lineup. I obviously got this inspiration from the race because they released their own video of it, and there was obviously some driver lineups that I agreed with, and there was some that I disagreed with. And then I forgot that I used to make the F1 debate videos, and then I stopped making them because I thought no one cared, but it turns out a few people have been asking, where are they? Because I care. So we're going to bring it back and have a look. And I've got it all on my phone, so I don't make sure I miss any out. So starting things off then with the worst driver lineup, I personally feel of 2025 is going to be RB, with Yuki Tsunoda and Isaac Hadjar. The purpose really for this is Isaac Hadjar obviously is a rookie in Formula 1, so he's not got the F1 experience to give him a sort of fair ranking of where he could be as a driver. Obviously he did very well in F2, obviously just missing out on the F2 title, but the biggest problem obviously for Hadjar is that he's not necessarily had any F1 experience. Like, he's had a couple, like one or two practice sessions here or there, but nothing major, and he hasn't really shone in terms of testing. So it's very hard for me to put Hadjar in like a good category. Obviously with Yuki Tsunoda, yes, he's a decent driver. He has started to control his crashes, and he has started to control his temper, but he still crashes, and he still has a temper. And is he somebody that Red Bull really want? I don't think so, personally. And is he somebody that can, I guess, lead a team? I don't think so either. I just think he's just not a driver that needs to be in the Red Bull program anymore. I think, for me personally, the quicker that Tsunoda's out of the Red Bull program, I think the more that he can actually develop and learn. Because I think where Tsunoda is, what Tsunoda's doing now in terms of his driving is that he's driving with frustration, I feel like, because he's not getting the drive that he thinks that he deserves, which is the Red Bull one, because Red Bull just don't really favour him as a driver and just his personality. And I just don't see enough in Tsunoda for me to go, yeah, he's a good idea to have as a team leader, because ultimately if Tsunoda was good enough, then he'd be in the Red Bull car. He wouldn't have to be a team leader in RB, if you know what I'm saying. So yeah, I just think it's a super weak lineup. But then I feel like RB should be that. You know, it should be a poor driver lineup, because you've got someone like Hadjar coming up the ranks into Formula 1, into the junior team. Tsunoda's a different example of that, but you know, that's where I feel like RB should be in general. There's a lot of B's that has to be said and all that. Next up though, I have picked Alpine as the 9th worst driver lineup on the grid, with Pierre Gasly and Jack Doohan. Now, I don't really have an issue with Pierre Gasly. I don't mind him at all. I don't really like him much, but he obviously managed to shrug off a lot of the issues and personal vendettas and rivalry between himself and Esteban Ocon, and managed to put in some great performances, especially in the second half of 2024. He is a quick driver. Can he become a team leader? Well, this is obviously what we're going to find out now. This is a new test for Pierre Gasly. And of course, then we've got Jack Doohan coming into the sport. Now, Jack is, again, he's a quick driver, and I'm very happy that we're getting to see more people enter into Formula 1 and have their opportunity. The problem with Jack Doohan is that it's quite clear that Alpine, from what it looks like, don't really want him in that team, but didn't have a choice but to put him in that team, because there's a heavy rumour going around that Jack has only got 5 races in that team before they put in Franco Colapinto, and I kind of just think, if that rumour is genuinely true, what was the point in signing Doohan in the first place? And what was the reasoning behind it? Why didn't Alpine just wait until the end of the season before making the announcement? But they made it obviously very early, and I understand, obviously, Franco Colapinto's a weird driver for the whole of the F1 grid, because he came into the season halfway through, you know, just after the summer break. Was it after Zandvoort? And then, yeah, his debut was the Italian Grand Prix. Then he started putting in some excellent race weekends, and all of a sudden it's, oh my god, this guy's amazing. And then all of a sudden, the fan base is massively rocked up for this Colapinto, and it's like, right, hang on a minute, this guy can make us some serious money here. And then obviously he has some races like Brazil, for example, and possibly Vegas, if I'm right in saying, where he just has massive crashes. And obviously it threw people off because obviously Red Bull were looking at him as a potential candidate for the RBC as well. So obviously Doohan is very much just coming into this as under pressure, doesn't really have much faith in his own team management. So we'll see, but it's just not an exciting lineup. Obviously, like I said, I rate Gasly in terms of, you know, his mentality. It's just now whether he can lead the Alpine team, because they definitely took a step forwards at the end of last year. It's now whether he can continue as basically the solo candidate for 2025, giving them a platform to expand on and obviously moving further into the seasons. Right, next up then, I've gone with Haas, with Esteban Ocon and Ollie Bearman. Bit of a surprise maybe to some of you that I put Haas this low down, but I kind of want to give my reasons for it. First things first, I'm not really a massive fan of Ocon. You know, if we look at the two drivers of Ocon and Bearman, obviously Ocon's coming in as the team leader, Bearman coming in as a proper rookie this time around, like a genuine rookie season. It just, to me, just doesn't feel like a lineup where I look at it and go, wow, that is going to be something great. Obviously, Haas have had a decent year last year, you know, and they managed to improve the car, they managed to work on it. It was quick and competitive in a lot of races, especially in the hands of Hülkenberg. And I just look at it and I think, is Ocon a naturally born team leader for Haas F1? No, he's not a natural team leader. That's just all I can say from that. Ollie Bearman has got a hell of a lot of talent. You know, he came in, when we saw him in Jeddah for Ferrari, he was excellent. Baku, he actually outclassed Nico Hülkenberg when he had that opportunity. The issue for Ollie Bearman, though, was that then come Brazil, he had an absolute shocker. Now, don't get me wrong, the weather conditions were really, really poor, but that's sort of a race where if you can do well, like Hamilton did in Fuji 2007, or Verstappen in 2016 in Brazil, the same track. Those type of wet weather races is where you can kind of establish yourself as somebody that's got some serious talent here. And I just felt like when the conditions were rough and when there's opportunities there, Bearman just had a shocker. And look, I'm not saying that Bearman's a bad driver, and I'm not saying that he's going to be a bad driver. And I'm not trying to put all of my eggs in the Bearman messed up in Brazil basket. He's got great potential, and I genuinely see him being in the Ferrari seat when Lewis Hamilton retires from the sport. I just think if I'm looking at those two as a combination, for me, I don't feel like Bearman is going to be able to learn anything off of Ocon. I actually think Bearman is going to cause a problem for Ocon moving forwards, because I think Esteban is going into that looking like he's the team leader. He's the one. He's the guy that's going to lead this Haas team and the revolution and the new, you know, foundations that have been left behind. But I actually think there's going to be more tension. Ocon's not a good teammate. He's just not. He has too many crashes and too many incidents with drivers. And with Bearman coming in, who's already a really quick driver, I just think it's going to get toxic. And I'm going to put my money on those two having a collision throughout the course of 2025. Right, next up then, I've gone with the Sauber driver lineup of, who is it? Give me a second, my head's gone. Hülkenberg and Bortoleto, if I pronounce his name correctly, obviously. The F2 champion going alongside Hülkenberg. Now, unfortunately, the two drivers themselves are not necessarily going to be, what should we say, exceeding expectations in terms of scoring loads of points and etc. Let's be real, Sauber, worst team on the grid. I didn't want to base the driver lineup on the team, if that makes sense. I wanted to base the driver lineup on just the two drivers. Now, don't get me wrong, they're going to be knocked out in Q1 quite a lot of times. I'm already picturing in my head now Bortoleto qualifying P20 and last for a lot of the races because he's a rookie, because he's obviously learning. And Hülkenberg, I just think from last season, I think, like, for me, Hülkenberg was probably one of the most underrated drivers of the season last year. He was so good. His qualifying performances were outstanding. Some of the races that he was putting in were just incredible. And he was just really, really good in that Haas. And I just feel like out of the driver lineups below, in terms of who I've already ranked below of Haas and RB, I just feel like Hülkenberg's better than Gasly. Hülkenberg is better than Ocon. Hülkenberg didn't do as well as Bearman in Baku, but obviously he was better in Brazil. I just think Hülkenberg's one of those drivers where he's so unlucky to not have a podium, but he's just good. He's just good. And obviously Bortoleto, again, he's not had any F1 experience like Behrman has, for example. So realistically, I could have put Haas in front of Sauber because at least we've seen what Behrman can do in an F1 car. But I just feel like the sheer talent that Hulkenberg showed, especially from last season, gives him the edge for me in terms of ranking the two teams against each other. So I've gone with Sauber as the next best team on the grid. Following Sauber and going one step further, we have gone with the other green team in Formula 1, Aston Martin. That is if obviously Kick Sauber stay green, which I can't see why they wouldn't, considering Kick's logo is green. But anyway, Aston Martin with Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll are next in my driver rankings. Quite a self-explanatory one here. Fernando Alonso, two-time world champion. He's, what is he now, like 42 years old. He's still got raw talent. He's still got raw speed. What he hasn't been given is a good enough car to exploit all that. I mean, I say that in 2023, obviously, Fernando put in some fantastic performances for Aston Martin. And obviously, we saw that with God knows how many podiums that he was scoring in consecutive races. The raw talent and the speed from Fernando Alonso is there. He just hasn't had the car to do it. The biggest problem with Aston Martin is not Fernando Alonso. It's not the fact that they've now got new team principal. It's not the team members within there, such as obviously Adrian Newey now being a part of that team. It's the caveat of Lance Stroll being in that team. Obviously, Lawrence Stroll owning the team. He's got his son in there, and he's obviously on basically a rolling contract. He's just there for whenever. And he's the biggest letdown. And this is why the driver lineup for Aston goes right down. And I genuinely do think come 2026, they will take action and get rid of Lance Stroll. I genuinely believe that. But Lance Stroll's just useless. And that's just my opinion on it. I genuinely think he's just one of the most useless drivers in the sport. Call me stupid, call me crazy. I just do not rate the guy in the slightest. I don't think he's quick. I don't think he's entertaining. Every interview that I see him go to, he just doesn't look like he cares. He crashes. That weekend in Brazil was one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen in my life. On a formation lap, to spin the car around, spin to the point when you're on the tarmac, drive onto the gravel trap and get stuck. Like, I've just never seen somebody so bad and yet still have a drive in Formula 1. Don't get me wrong, there are times, and we're starting to not see that anymore, where there are drivers on the track, and to be honest, they don't deserve to be on the racetrack. Like, for me, do I think Gasly deserves a seat over other drivers? Not really. Ocon, do I think he deserves a drive in F1? Not really. But there's also a bit of an argument as to why they deserve it, because they obviously, for example, like Brazil, both of them showed some brilliant racing display in horrific conditions. But then I look at Lance Stroll and I think, what has Lance Stroll done to deserve staying in Formula 1? What has he done recently where we can say, actually, no, if you look at that race, in fairness, he's performed really well. So you can see there's something there. Like when I look at Fernando Alonso and another driver coming up soon, Fernando Alonso, when he's got a good car, he's competitive. He's fired up. He races. But even when Aston Martin were good at the start of 23 and for the start of 24, Lance Stroll was never there. He never scored podiums in 2023 when the Aston Martin was a podium contending car. He wasn't quick in 2024 either. It wasn't really challenging the Mercedes, for example, when Aston had an edge over Mercedes. It was like, I remember the battle in China in the sprint, I want to say it was, when it was Fernando Alonso, Sergio Perez and the two Ferraris. Like, Alonso was just there in the thick of it, going for it, doing really well. And then Stroll is, nowhere. He's just nowhere to be seen, and he just can't qualify and he can't race. So, unfortunately, Aston Martin would be higher up on my list if they just didn't have him in the team. Because if they didn't, then there'd be a different conversation to be had. But that unfortunately means that while Fernando Alonso is way higher in terms of my driver ranking of him as just a solo driver, as a team, unfortunately, Stroll brings him down. Coming in then after Aston Martin, I have picked Williams as the next best driver lineup. That's what, the fifth best driver lineup I picked them now as far as I'm aware? Yes. So slap bang in the middle for Williams. Short and short, I think Alex Albon is a decent driver. I don't think he's amazing. He didn't have a brilliant 2024, but, you know, I guess he would have probably had a wake-up call because of the whole Franco Colapinto coming in. Obviously, he's going to have to significantly raise his game because now they've got Carlos Sainz in there. And I just think that's just such a well-rounded driver lineup. And I'm really First of all, I'm looking forward to seeing Carlos Sainz driving in the Williams alongside Albon. I think Albon needs this type of test. Obviously, he got his ass handed to him by Max Verstappen, virtually killed off his Formula One career. He's obviously revived it a little bit now by coming back into the Williams fray. But to be honest, when you've got somebody like, well, I can't even remember, Logan Sargent, there we go. I cannot believe that's just, I forgot who they had in that team. But yeah, when you've got a teammate like Logan Sargent, while Albon was brilliant in 2023, it just puts into perspective, it's like, Alex there's the boundary. Are you this good, or are you only this good because the driver is this shit? You know, and when Colapinto came in, that actually balanced it out a little bit. I think Albon still had the edge, especially in qualifying, but Colapinto was definitely keeping him on his toes, if that makes sense. Now he's got to deal with Carlos Sainz, a race winner, you know, a proven fighter, and I feel like if Albon can do, you know, some decent work against Carlos Sainz, it then rebuilds the reputation massively. On the flip side of it, if Carlos Sainz demolishes Alex Albon, then Albon's reputation goes down the drain. So it's a rock and a hard place here, but I ultimately think that it's the right thing for both. And I just think it's such a greatly balanced lineup. Both are very, very quick. Both can do well in the races. I'm still disappointed and still massively shocked that Carlos Sainz has not got a better seat than Williams, but all Carlos Sainz needs to do, in my opinion, is just put in some super strong performances in this Williams team. And you never know, he might then go ahead and get himself a better team in the near future. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's a great lineup. Well balanced, well rounded. If Williams can get a car better this time around, obviously this winter shouldn't be as traumatic as it was last winter and not have a million crashes on their plate, then they'll obviously be in a good position going forwards. Next up then, for the driver lineups, I've gone with Mercedes-Benz as the fourth best driver lineup on the grid. I'm pretty sure the races video had Red Bull lower and then Mercedes, Red Bull was like the fourth best and then Mercedes was the third best. Spoiler alert, I didn't agree with that. I actually think the Mercedes driver lineup is worse than the Red Bull driver lineup. So let's get into that. And obviously, that's a big statement to say because I don't know if it shows up properly. I'm wearing obviously my Mercedes gear. Yes, obviously, I'll go on to Ferrari in a minute when we get to them in terms of what I'm going to do about this season. But anyway, Mercedes, George Russell, Kimi Antonelli. What do I think of what's going to happen between these lot? Right. George Russell is obviously proven that he's good enough in Formula One. He's good enough. He was quick against Lewis Hamilton. Obviously beat him in the 2022 and the 2024 seasons. He got kind of humiliated in the 2023 season by Lewis Hamilton. What's George Russell proven? Can he be a team leader? Yes, 100%. That's a key thing for George Russell. Can he lead the Mercedes team? I think he can. I think he's got the credentials to do that. And I think if he's got a car underneath him, he can really perform well. I think in the ground effect era, George Russell is great at qualifying. And as much as I'd say the ground effect era, to be honest, in general, George Russell is very good at qualifying. I remember some of his qualifyings in the Williams car in 2021, such as Silverstone, Belgium and Sochi, with some outstanding qualifying from him. So George Russell can qualify. That's a key thing. The race pace is something that George Russell needs to work on a little bit more. There are some races where George can execute it perfectly, like Las Vegas. Started on pole, fended off the Ferraris, had better tyre life in there, and, you know, he carries on his way. But there are some times when his race pace is disappointing, like, for example, Abu Dhabi, when he started quite high up the grid and Hamilton actually beat him despite finishing, starting all the way back there. And some other tracks as well, where he's just off it in terms of the pace. And I'm just thinking, you could probably do a little bit more than what you are doing. The thing is, for George Russell, though, is there's enough there to say he's a really good driver. And when it comes to fighting wheel to wheel, he will be there and he'll give you a good battle. And I'm speaking of race paces, Belgium, that's where that was the one that my head was going. Obviously, there's a big unknown about his new teammate, Kimi Antonelli. Obviously, he had a good practice session in Mexico. He had a horrible practice session in Monza because he was just basically over-driving the car on a green circuit without really doing much. Trying to over-impress, really, and crashed, which is not very great. I think he's definitely got some talent, Antonelli. And it's bold from Mercedes to put him into that team. It's definitely a risk, and maybe it's a risk that will be taken well. Maybe it's a risk that will end up going backwards, but you never know. I think it's a good idea to put him into the team. I think he's had plenty of testing now. I think he's quick, and I genuinely am finding that lineup very, very exciting. I don't think it's the best lineup out there, obviously, because there's a few things to identify with Mercedes. First of all, can George Russell consistently prove that he's a top driver in Formula 1? Because obviously he's had glimpses of this, like I said, with Las Vegas, Belgium, and some of his qualifying sessions. But now he needs to prove it on a very regular basis. And in terms of the headlines around that team, the headlines is no longer around Hamilton and, you know, him moving to Ferrari and just Hamilton being Mr. Mercedes. Hamilton's gone now. Like the teacher, should we say, for George Russell for the last couple of years, he's gone. So if you're going to try and look at some extra data and maybe some other tips and things that Hamilton does, whether it's driving or whether it's just something within the team, how he speaks, how he does something, that's all gone now. So George Russell, as much as everyone's on their own, he is more so on his own, it's hard to explain, but he is on his own now. So can he prove that he is the new man for Mercedes? That's the key thing. And Kimi Antonelli now, can he prove the sheer speed that he's got, which he showed in races in F2 like Silverstone and the Hungarian Grand Prix, I was going to say the sprint, but it was the feature race. Can he show those types of speed and escalate that into Formula 1 and cause chaos for other drivers? Because he could just well be a new and young and exciting driver. I'm looking forward to it, and I will see how they get along. Right, moving in then above Mercedes-Benz, it's Red Bull. Now, obviously, I have flipped what the race did when they put Mercedes above Red Bull. I actually think Red Bull's driver lineup is better than Mercedes' driver lineup. Liam Lawson is a good driver. It's a very bold move to put Liam Lawson alongside Max Verstappen. But the thing with Liam Lawson that I like a lot about him is that in terms of his ability to go wheel to wheel with racing drivers, he's got some good talent. You know, there was a lot of rivalry between him and Sergio Perez. There was a couple of times where he was a little bit silly, like getting past Perez on the start-finish straight and then just flipping him off with his middle finger. That's a little bit unnecessary and just like, what's the point? But his wheel-to-wheel driving is super aggressive, but very, very fair. And I think that's something that's going to be needed for Red Bull going into this year. Obviously, they've only had Max Verstappen to rely on. Now they needed a second driver to rely on. And I think in terms of the wheel-to-wheel combat side of things, Lawson's there. If as long as he's comfortable with the car that he's got, in terms of fighting another driver, he ain't going to back down. And that's what I like about Lawson. And what I liked more so about this Red Bull lineup, obviously, is you've got the two rookies in full rookie season, should we say, a full rookie year of Antonelli. Obviously, Lawson's had more experience, so I would prefer to have Lawson over Antonelli. Obviously, Lawson was great in 2023. In 2024, the race in the USA in COTA was a fantastic race from Lawson. He started behind Tsunoda, did a way better strategy, and then he came out of the pits. It was ahead of Tsunoda. Tsunoda's like complaining, like, how is he in front of me? There was no response on the radio. Me and my dad were just watching the race, and I just was like, because he's better than you. I think Lawson will probably do well at that team. He says that with, complete bold prediction and no other analysis to go on to. And ultimately, Max Verstappen's the best driver in the F1 grid. Right now, there's no one else better than Max Verstappen. 4-time world champion, if you're comparing George Russell and Max Verstappen, Verstappen's way better than George Russell. So for me, the Red Bull driver lineup is definitely the best. The third best driver lineup out there in terms of their prospects for this season. It's a very unknown one, I think. In terms of all the cars that get launched, Red Bull's is going to be the one that's most anticipated because they definitely had a conceptual issue with their RB20. It was definitely not the right design. They obviously then went to a very weird high downforce engine cover package for pretty much the rest of the season, bar Italy and Belgium when they went to those massive gully engine covers, the gully cannons as I call them, that Mercedes had in 2023. So the actual concept of the 2025 car is, I think, what most teams are looking forward to seeing from Red Bull, or for most fans, shall I say. But no matter what, Max Verstappen will be there. He's just an incredibly quick driver in qualifying and in the race, and he showed that, obviously, in 2024. He wasn't in the fastest car for a lot of the season, should I say. But it was always him there, whether in Silverstone, Hamilton was winning, Verstappen's right behind him. In the Dutch Grand Prix, McLaren, by far the quickest car out there, Verstappen is still behind Norris. Singapore, Norris, again, by far the quickest one, Verstappen is still there. Vegas, they're Mercedes 1 and 2, Ferrari right in the mix, McLaren are slightly off the pace, Verstappen is still there fighting. So you know, I have got high praise for Verstappen, and I think they've got the third best lineup on the grid. So then, who is going to be the second best driver lineup on the grid, and who's going to have the best driver lineup on the grid? Well, the second best driver lineup on the grid is McLaren, Constructors Champions from last year. My personal feeling is that they will not win the Constructors for next season. That could be a bit controversial, but without a shadow of a doubt, obviously Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, the two of them definitely went through a learning phase last year. Let's cut to the chase though. Both are super quick. Both are super consistent. Both are brilliant at wheel-to-wheel racing. Do I think that they are going to do better than they did last year? They possibly could. I think Piastri, if we look at the two drivers, starting with Oscar Piastri, I think he's got a bit more to learn. Obviously, that was his second season of Formula 1 last year, and he was incredible. The two race wins that he had, the Hungarian Grand Prix, bit of a dodgy one. Baku thoroughly deserved it and, outraced Charles Leclerc. The two of them are just brilliant drivers. I think the worry that McLaren are going to have is that the development curve between Oscar and Lando is going to clash at some point. I think they obviously introduced their, in quote, papaya rule, and I didn't really think it was the right time to do it. They should have done it earlier. But I think the problem is Lando Norris has been at McLaren now since 2019. This is his sixth season in Formula 1 now, I think, for McLaren. Oscar's going into his third season, and he's only going to develop more. I just feel like Oscar's going to outdevelop Lando. And if I had to pick one of the two drivers to win a championship, I would pick Oscar over Lando. Pretty bold and pretty silly for me to say that, but I genuinely think so. Don't get me wrong, they've both got incredible talents, and I think they're both super quick. And what I meant by 2024 was a learning season for them. In all due respect, they never had a car that was given to them where they were capable of winning races and being right at the front of the field on a consistent basis. Obviously, the 2023 McLaren was a development curve, literally from the bottom towards the top of the field. But there was elements of last year where the pressure was on them. They'd never led races for, start to finish. They'd never had to strategically master Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull. They never had to, qualifying was obviously a little bit different because there was some pole positions for the team last year in the sprints. But, in 2023 for the sprints. Obviously, in 2024, they had more pole positions than that. And ultimately, when it came to a championship battle, in terms of the constructors, they were better than Ferrari. And that's more so because they had a better car all year round than Ferrari did. But in terms of the Drivers' Championship side of things, I think they'll take a lot from 2024, and they have to use that in 2025 because the pressure will be on McLaren. They'll definitely be the odds-on favourite for the Constructors' title, and possibly even the Drivers' title in the hands of Lando Norris, I think most people will go by. And it's not a stupid thing to say, and it's probably a stupid thing for me to say that I don't think it will happen, but maybe I'm wrong in that. But I just feel like they're both fantastic drivers. They both got the speed. They just need to try and trip over each other a little bit less going into 2025. Otherwise, they'll be pretty much sound and safe, to be honest. But they're not quite as good as a driver lineup as Ferrari, who obviously I have picked as the best driver lineup on the grid for 2025. And I don't really need to explain it that much. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. What a driver lineup that is going to be for 2025. And for somebody that's a diehard Mercedes fan, but also has been a diehard Lewis Hamilton fan since he came into the sport in 2007, I think the gear that I'll be wearing for 2025 is going to be very weirdly split, whether it's a Mercedes cap and then a Ferrari t-shirt, or a Ferrari cap and a Mercedes t-shirt. I don't know how that's going to work, but anyway, let's get to the two drivers. Charles Leclerc, one of the fastest drivers on the grid. I personally think right now, only Verstappen is a quicker driver than Charles Leclerc. That could potentially be a controversial thing to say, but I genuinely think that. I think Charles Leclerc is a master in qualifying. I think he's fantastic. He always gets the best out of the car in qualifying. In the races, he is still supremely fast, and races like Austin, when he just battered everyone, is a testament to that. And where Charles Leclerc has definitely improved from over the years is that he's better, I feel, in wheel-to-wheel racing. He's still fast, he's still aggressive, and he's still just, fair and clean and quick. But he's also got a lot of the mistakes out of him. Obviously, I remember, in Miami 2023, when he was in qualifying and he spun and he crashed. And then in 2022, when he crashed in the French Grand Prix and he made a mess of it in the Hungarian Grand Prix. And There was always something about Charles Leclerc where he was just super, super fast, but there was something inconsistent just waiting around the corner to stop him. And I feel like that's gone now. And if Ferrari give Charles Leclerc a car that's super quick and consistent for the whole season, not like they had post-Monaco where it just, post-Barcelona upgrade when it just went south for them for quite a long time. If they can give him a consistent car for the whole of the season, I feel like Charles Leclerc can now fight for a championship because he's got the mental capacity to do it. He's got the speed to do it. And even in 2022, when there was mistakes in him, the first race of the season in Bahrain, he went wheel to wheel with Max Verstappen and did not care. He just fought him super hard and aggressive like Max did. Same in Austria in that time period as well. So now I think he's ready for it. And finally then, obviously, Lewis Hamilton now joining the Scuderia Ferrari. And I've just been fanboying over Ferrari and Hamilton since the past week when they've been revealing all the pictures of him in his Ferrari suit, his helmet, him in the car, him on the track. It's going to be the thumbnail of Hamilton just on the track because why not? I think Hamilton is going to be a completely different gravy. That sentence doesn't make sense. I think Hamilton will be different gravy this year. I think, look, 2021, that championship loss hit him super, super hard, and it hit anyone super, super hard. And it was clear that 2022 was just even more of a mental beatdown because you go through that type of season, you then go on the winter break, you then come back in a brand new era of Formula One. The team that you fought so hard against is now winning all the races. The team that you're with all of a sudden hasn't got the car concept right. You're in races, you're bouncing, you've got headaches, your back hurts, you can't even get out of a car. And then you go to 2023, and then as per what Lewis is saying, they don't listen to you and they go ahead and they build another flawed car concept. And all of a sudden you've got a whole nother year of this pain and suffering. Then you go to 2024 and you think, right, they've changed the concept a bit here. And then it's still super inconsistent and a problem. And we've seen this from Lewis Hamilton before. Go to McLaren, obviously 07 and 08, championship in 08, didn't get it in 07, but probably should have. But maybe there was some issues back then that would have related to that, apart from the China incident, probably Spygate and some other dodgy dealings back then. 2009, didn't have the car for it. 2010, he had the car for it, just didn't do it. 2011, didn't have the car ready to do it. Red Bull was too fast. 2012, then all of a sudden you've got a car that can do it, but then there's reliabilities that come in the way. There was so many slow pit stops at the start of the year for McLaren that cost him, and all of a sudden it was like frustration had built in Lewis Hamilton, and then he leaves for a fresh chapter. And this for me is very similar to that. If you give Hamilton a car in this Ground Effect era that is competitive right the way through, he will be there and he will be consistent and he will be quick. Look at, qualifying sessions. That's where Lewis Hamilton has definitely lost his edge, is qualifying. He's not super quick in qualifying anymore, but race trim is a different story. Belgium, Silverstone, Las Vegas, there is still a super fast Lewis Hamilton there. He just needs the car for it. And I feel if Ferrari can give a car to Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton that's consistent throughout the course of the season, I've got no doubts that those two will win the Constructors' Championship for Ferrari. Whether they can win the Drivers' Championship, who knows? It might be that, say Verstappen is just, again, super quick in the Red Bull on his own. Maybe Norris is able to put in more performances. Because the problem that Leclerc and Hamilton may have, and this maybe may not be, is that they might take points off of each other. Same as, I guess, Lando and Oscar will. I just think those two, with the Ferrari car, I think that they will win the Constructors this year. And they're just two of the best drivers on the grid. I think, Leclerc is definitely going to have the edge, I feel, on Hamilton in qualifying. But I think Hamilton, in terms of his race pace, if he's got a consistent car there, is definitely going to be no slouch and will give Charles Leclerc a difficult time. And I just can't wait to see those two in red. It's going to be absolutely awesome. But that is it, guys, for my F1 2025 driver lineup rankings from the worst all the way to the very best. If you guys ended up enjoying the video, feel free to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here as well. If you guys still enjoy the F1 debate videos and you want them to longly continue, not only just post-race debates, but anything else Formula 1 related, then we can definitely get some more videos out there for you guys. Just let me know in the comment section down below. And until next time, I will see you very soon. Take care all. Peace.